If there are 10% less camper age kids now than there were 10 years ago, how have you changed how you run camp?
This is CampHacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
Your mission is campers. Whereabouts' mission is making their experience coordinated and connected. Whereabouts is the only camper management system that keeps parents, admin, and staff in sync in real time, so every camper's day runs with confidence, clarity, and care. Check them out today at whereaboutsapp.io.
Running camp comes with enough moving parts. UltraCamp keeps registration, payments, and communication in one place so you can spend less time juggling systems and more time building an incredible camp experience. Learn more at ultracampmanagement.com/camphacker. Hello, CampHackers, and welcome to the CampHacker podcast, brought to you by UltraCamp, Camptivities, and the Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic. My name is Travis Allison. I'm a summer camp consultant specializing in helping camps reclaim their staff time, build resilience, and reignite their purpose.
Hi, I'm Jake Sorenson. I'm the director of Sacred Playgrounds, and we work with Christian summer camps doing evaluation and consulting work.
I'm Eric Wittenberg, and I work with Camper Machine and the Camp Stack, and we help automate and move camp data to free up time for camp directors.
Hi, I'm Steph Gillman. I'm the director of Hofstra Summer Camps, as well as youth education here at Hofstra University.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'm grateful that you are all here. Thank you for being a part of this. Just quickly, so people get to know you. Steph, what is your background in camp?
Well, I grew up going to camp. Many years ago, I sort of fell off and started playing competitive soccer, but studied school counseling at university and got a little burnt out. So I went back to my roots. I worked for a residential camp for about 5 years before becoming the director of Hofstra Summer Camps here at Hofstra University.
I'm grateful you're here, Steph. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Jake, how about you?
Yeah, I grew up going to camp like Steph, and I worked at several different camps. And so I grew up in Christian camping, and that was a big part of my formation, my faith formation, and my call to vocation in the church. And so I worked in the church for a number of years and then got back into camp as a full-time program director. And it was while I was there that I was starting to ask some of these questions about data and numbers and what sort of research do we have about summer camp. And there really wasn't a lot at the time. Of course, now that has changed. But a mentor said, maybe you need to do something about that. And so I ended up going back to seminary and got my PhD and focused on research surrounding Christian summer camps. And so I get to live in the research world and help camps tell their stories through data-driven insights.
Jake also has a podcast called Sacred Playgrounds. So if you use the app that you're listening to us in, you can search for Sacred Playgrounds and hear all the stuff that he and Jared discuss about their work and the work going on in the camps that they serve. Eric, how about you? How did you get started in camp? Yours is a fun story.
I was just a staff kid. My mom was a director of a kind of secular day camp in White Plains, New York. So I grew up eating Cheerios under her desk, just running amok. And I often say, I don't remember camp. I remember being with the other staff kids at a day camp, running around until 9 p.m. when it was like, okay, come back.
Yeah.
But I helped people take over and kind of revamp day camps, started CrossFit gyms, started a girls only overnight soccer camp. So I'll talk to Steph about women's soccer later. And then I started Camper Machine and the Camp Stack, because I needed automation tools as an owner operator and kind of selling camps that are 5 days long. You need a lot more help.
Yes, a lot more bodies.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful to have a panel of very smart thinkers in the camp world. And as I alluded to in the beginning, we're talking about the changing in demographics and the changing in the way that families budget and prioritize their kids' activities. But this topic really came from you, Steph. What was the impetus for you saying this is something we need to think about and be more intentional around?
So as I mentioned earlier, I work at Hofstra University, and at the very beginning of the semester, the president of the university, Susan Poser, she did a State of the Union address to, the community and was talking about the enrollment cliff. So we'll get into that, but it really prompted my curiosity about what does that mean at the university level, but also what does it mean for every other population of, matriculating young person. For me as a camp director, it immediately, put sirens on my radar. Like, this is really important. And it was only being brought to my periphery in this State of the Union address. So it felt like something that I really needed to dig into and be very, very aware of.
Yeah. Definitely a thing that we need to be super thoughtful around. And I talked about less kids, but we're also talking, because of demographics, we're talking about less staff, less people staff age to pull from. Chick, you did some work to get ready for this show, and I'm super grateful for that. What are some of the things that you think are most important to pass on from that?
Yeah, I was able to connect with a demographer, and he actually gave me a FaceTime chat and talked through some of the things that are really facing Western society right now in terms of the declining birth rates. And looking at some of these demographic shifts helps us to see patterns in the camping industry, not just the present patterns, but in the past as well. And so when we look at some of the declines in camper numbers, say in the late 1970s and 1980s, that was after the baby boom generation came through camp, and we started with those lower numbers of cohorts with the Generation X coming through. And we saw a decline in camper numbers, and we saw closures of camps. And so somewhere around 1 in 5 camps closed between the late 1970s and the mid 1990s. And that had to do with this demographic shift. And then we had this interesting demographic group called the millennials, which is actually larger numerically than the baby boom generation. Those kids have now aged out of camp, and we are at the edge of another demographic shift that is going to have tremendous implications for the camp industry. And it already is. We're already seeing this in camp. So Steph was talking about this demographic cliff for colleges and universities. They're working with 18, 19, 20-year-olds. For camp, we're working with 8 to 14-year-olds. The median camper age is 11. And so when we think about these demographic cliffs, we're already at the edge in camp. And they're just starting to experience it in higher education. And there's more coming. So we can already see what's going to come our way because of the data that we have from the CDC and other organizations that show us how many kids have been born. But it's not just the number of kids, it's the demographic shifts. And so when we think about these demographic shifts, camp has historically been a space for middle and upper class white kids. Now, of course, that has changed. Of course, that's not the case at all camps. But by and large in the industry, white kids come to camp more than kids of color. That's a simple reality. The demographics are shifting and have shifted so that now children under 18 are more likely to be people of color in the United States than white kids. That has just shifted in the last 2 to 3 years. And so we are seeing those consequences as well in the camping industry because it is a historically white space.
And well, two things from what you said, but one is we did a show at the end of last year about how the industry has pulled back from any kind of equity programming, and the folks that work with camps on equity issues aren't getting work. And it seems like such a important reason why we're talking about this today is that we need to be better at welcoming more communities to camp and creating the right environment for that, for our survival, on top of the need to serve these kids.
Yes, absolutely. And policy works into this, right? And so some people are shying away from DEI work because of political pressure and the environment that we're living in. We're seeing this demographic cliff in large part because of terrible policies at the national level in the United States. And we are now seeing the results of that. 2017 was the year that the Trump administration took office. Those kids are now entering camper age. And that's where we start to see a big demographic shift, 2017, because in large part, a decline in immigration. And so this demographer friend that I was talking with was saying that the United States is unique among Western nations in a lot of ways because we have not been declining as quickly. And the reason is because of immigration. And this goes for Canada too. I asked him about Canada too. So the United States and Canada demographically are very similar in terms of number of live births and the reliance on immigration for increasing population. And so when we're policy-wise, we're discouraging and prohibiting immigration, that has tremendous consequences for our population and the population of young people, live births, all of those things. And that's impacting the camp industry tremendously. It's a double hit for the camp industry because we're talking about live births, but we're also talking about people of color and immigrants not coming in. And so you get a double hit with the camp industry, but this is affecting all industries. And so this demographer, Ken Gronbach is his name, really looks at marketing and economic trends based on demographics. And so, when I told him that I was involved in the camp industry, he was like, "Oh, you guys are in trouble. You guys are in deep trouble." And he just, and he started listing off these industries of clothing industries, but toy industries, all these different things that are going to see tremendous shifts because of the demographic shifts. And camp is one of those industries that's really going to see some challenges. And we did talk about ways that we could mitigate these things, and hopefully we'll get to that as well. But I've talked enough for now.
Well, the other thing that comes up for me is one of those extrapolations of this that we're not going to have time to get into, but something I've been advocating for years is that camps have opportunities to serve people who are not just 18 and under, and that we have the facilities, we have the expertise, we have the people to serve different populations, but for whatever reason, intimidation, it's just not comfortable, whatever, we don't explore those enough. Eric, you are doing some really interesting work around metrics and all of those kind of things. What does this topic represent to you?
This is as Jake was talking, I'm like, simultaneously, one side of my brain is like innovation, excitement, creativity, new programs, birthing new things, revolution. Like Steph's over there, she's got like, I'm sure Hofstra has like a harbor somewhere that sits like dormant for 9 months. It's like underwater, like so much cool, new, fun things, and also fear and being terrified. And I haven't studied the demography, as well as Jake or certainly the demographer he's talking about, but like seeing things about birth rate and replacement rates declining, and other countries that drop below 1.8, 1.9. It's like it could be kind of scary.
Eric, can you explain 1.8 or 1.9, what that number is?
Sure. So for basically for every, and I might butcher it, Jake, but for every 2 people they're replaced on the planet, on the country, they're replacing themselves with a lesser number. So countries like Japan, who are the leading edge of not replacing the dying generations, they're down like 1.6 or something. Jake might know the real new number. But
yeah, Japan is struggling. China is struggling mightily, and then Korea actually was talked about as the lowest replacement rate. They're somewhere near, they're under 1 actually. So it's just it's a demographic nightmare for them. And so the replacement rate would be 2.2 per couple. And so when Eric talks about it being below 2, that's below replacement population. That means you have an aging population, and that what you end up having then is you don't have parity among the age cohorts, and so you have more older people than you have younger people, and we're just going to be entering that. So demographers are now predicting that in the 2030s, we're going to have more people over the age of 65 than people under the age of 18. And so that is a demographic challenge that we're going to be facing as we have fewer people in the workforce, fewer people coming up through our schools, and more people retired and not contributing directly to economic production. Sorry, Eric, I didn't mean to.
Well, it was just so the thing that keeps me up at night, and I talk to my kids and wife about, is that like it's an undebatable statistic that when a population's replacement rate drops below 1.6 is what I've seen, it basically becomes statistically highly improbable that you'll ever recover, because it would take 5 generations of like every 2 people reproducing 4 or 5 kids. And so as our culture the culture shifting is the part that I feel a tremendous amount of fear and uncertainty around. The creating new programs for those new people, that's the fun part.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I kind of, in my brain, I have to separate these two things from the big sort of abominable snowman of societal shifts and policies that I'm not really, I'm not the Capitol Hill type of human. I'm like living in the applied world of like, what can I do about it? So thank God for the people that are, campaigning and thinking and looking at those big issues. But to I think where you wanted to usher me, Travis, is like, I love creating new programs where there was nothing to bring the camp magic. And I grew up in a sort of very traditional 8-week day camp program where you do this, and everybody does a little bit of basketball, a little bit of pinch pots, pottery, athletics, everything. But the world of, specialization, our specialized economy is like another societal macro thing. Is like, you don't just want the hair cutter, you want the hair cutter that specializes in mohawks or curly hair or whatever it is. And so that need or interest for camp people to learn, like there are so many specialized camps that we just totally overlook. But like I think it's Mythic is the parent company. There's like a brand of camps that they just do like Hogwarts inspired camps in like 30 different locations. I've been dying to work with them for like a million years, but like there's a need and a way to provide a really great camp experience to interests and population and geography based changes. So part of the work that I've been doing is, helping people that have had the same program running for 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years, look at their data to say, oh yeah, your average camper used to come from these zip codes. Now they're coming from these zip codes. And funny change, the racial, ethnic, economic makeup of those zip codes is very different than who you're used to. And, it's going to change your sort of crazy political posts on Facebook, maybe. It's going to change, the words and colors you might use to communicate things. So you kind of have to really think about who you want to serve and how.
Right. Steph, when you got this light bulb moment from listening to this presentation or speech, what was your action? What did you start with after that?
So initially it was, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. We're embedded in the university. So something as basic as our tuition prices, right? We started having like really deep conversations with our finance department about our tuition. We run session-based camps. So kids could stay for 1 week all the way up to 7 weeks. And they were really pressing us to increase the tuition quite a bit, more than, quite frankly, I was comfortable with, knowing the economic situation on a different level. The reason they were doing that was because at mid-tier universities, they're struggling to meet their own financial quotas. So they were looking to these auxiliary programs, me, to sort of fix their problem. But ultimately, their problem is my problem, right? It's the same problem, no matter which level of the university you're working at. So we needed to really dig into how is this going to affect us, not just in the tuition level, but also how are we recruiting campers and what kind of programs do we need to develop, not only to bring in new families, but also to appease the university. And we've done some pretty substantial work in a very short period of time just to address those two big issues.
And I'm excited. I want to get us to solutions. We're not going to leave without solutions, I promise. I don't want to drop bombs on people and just walk away. And so I'm interested in the things that we could do. I had a conversation with a longtime camp colleague that I really respect, who was talking about auxiliary programs and this exactly what you described, this people in schools. And for me, auxiliary programs can include like the camps at the Y zone or the camps that church or faith organizations own, because it doesn't to them. And I grew up working in church camps as well, and no one ever believed that our ministry was real. It was just a nice place to put kids, and it didn't get the same respect as running a church. And it's the same, I think, with you're not a branch YMCA, you're just a side program of ours. And that has often meant that camps don't have a seat at the discussion table. But now the expectation is turning that you will still keep not having a seat at the table, but you will start generating a lot of revenue for us. And that's a really weird spot for us to be in as an industry. Yeah. Jake, what else do you see?
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, I would say that we also have the opportunity as camps, because we're working in such a unique space and there's such a big need for what we offer with camp right now. And the world sees this, right? We need places that are tech free. We need places that are face to face, that develop social skills, that develop leadership, that develop resilience. All these things. I mean, these are all the social science books that are coming out, right? They're the most popular books on the market, and we have the answers for these things. And so I think we've got a pretty good case to make that we deserve a seat at the table. I agree with you, Travis, that seat has not always been opened up, and we don't always get the respect that we need in the industry. And I hope that can change. And that's one of the major goals of our work at Sacred Playgrounds, is to work to tell that story so that we can get into some of these conversations. In terms of these demographic cliffs, we might be thinking, okay, why? How much time, or when? How much time do we have? Things like that. And Steph knows that colleges are right at the precipice right now, because it is 2025, and the year 2007 is a key year, because 2007 saw the largest number of live births in United States history, more than any year during the baby boom generation. So 4,316,000 babies were born that year, more than any other year. Now, we also know that right after that, in 2008, the Great Recession happened and started. And that's when we start to see this drop off of live births. And so for about 10 years after that, there was this holding pattern. From about 2007 to 2016, there were fewer births in those years than in the previous years, by about 8 or 9%. And so there was a big drop right there. And so the reason that colleges are now at the precipice is because add 18 years to 2007, what number do you get? You get 2025. So those 18-year-olds, those high school graduates are just now entering college. That's why colleges and universities are talking about this right now. And that's one of the reasons that camps have already started to see this. They've already seen some of these declines. When I say some of, I do that intentionally because there's another cliff coming. And that cliff, as I alluded to earlier, is 2017. I said we had kind of a stabilization period where it was lower than 2007, but it was stable for almost 10 years in there until 2017. And then we start to see a precipitous drop every year, all the way up through COVID, all the way down to 2023. And so, and 2024, the numbers aren't quite finalized yet, but it looks to be lower than 2023. So 2023 is significant because there were fewer than 3.6 million live births in that year. And that's the fewest in the United States since 1979. And so we're talking about really big drops, 17% drop since 2007. Now, when we think about, let's add so 2017 is the start of that decline. Let's add our median age camper of 11 to that. That means that in 2028, that's the demographic breaking year for our camps. 2028, we're going to start to see that 2020 age cohort. They're going to reach 8 years old. They're going to reach camper age. And we're going to start to see the edge of that demographic cliff hit our median camper age. And so from 2028, we're going to see about a decade of really challenging camper declines. And so we're already starting to see that. But we're just at the forefront of that. And so that's what we can start to think about in terms of demographics and years. And remember that these demographic shifts also mean that there are more children of color than there are white children. And so if our camper populations are primarily white kids, that's something that we need to think about too, in terms of these demographic challenges.
And some of our overarching organizations, colleges, universities, YMCA, JCCs, are also predominantly white, and they have been our historical source of new campers. Then that's a compounding problem too.
Yes, and we can't just raise tuition fees, right? That's
Right,
not gonna fill the gap. That's not gonna do it. And we've already started using shoulder years, for camp. We've started saying, oh, let's have 6-year-olds come to camp. Let's see if we can get some older kids to come to camp. And so we've already expanded in those directions in the ways that we can, and that's mitigated some of the challenges. But we've already done some of those kind of obvious and simple interventions, and so it's time to rethink some of these things.
Yep.
This Go Camp Pro podcast is brought to you by Whereabouts, a new product from our friends at Camptivities. Ever had that heart-stopping moment when a camper accidentally goes home on the bus, but their guardian was supposed to pick them up? Or when you can't confirm everyone's arrived at camp until noon, even though the morning meeting ended hours ago? What about those little moments that slip through the cracks, like staff not knowing it's a camper's birthday or missing a special event reminder? You're not alone. Camps everywhere are saying the same thing. They need a less manual, more connected way to manage the camper experience from drop-off to pickup. Introducing Whereabouts, the only camper management system that updates in real time across 3 interfaces: parents, admin, and staff. The parent app is attendance forward and includes all the features families expect: facial recognition photos, event calendars, news feeds, and more, giving parents peace of mind and your team fewer calls to handle. One system, one set of data, everyone in sync, all the time. From knowing where every camper is, to reducing office chaos, to helping staff feel more connected, Whereabouts help your camp run smarter, not harder. Book a demo today at whereaboutsapp.io.
Exclusive for CampHacker listeners, grab UltraCamp's free guide, The Parent Experience Checklist. Practical steps to simplify registration and keep families coming back. Download at ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker. Parents don't want clunky processes, and you don't want constant phone calls. UltraCamp helps you simplify registration with mobile-friendly forms, offer payment plans that work for your families, reduce calls and emails with automated reminders, and keep parents engaged with built-in communication tools. UltraCamp helps you create smooth, stress-free parent interactions so your team can focus on camp, not customer service. Learn more at ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker. Eric?
I don't want to add and another thing.
Do it. Lay it
And
on us.
another thing. But it's really providing some additional context right now to hear Jake's sort of meta-analysis of what's happening, because I assume people like Steph that I've spoken to have learned about this through the symptoms of, perceived antidotes to this from well-meaning CFOs of schools that have made their sort of more local policies to make a concerted effort, knowing this was happening, to go out and get more international college students, to go out and get more international. So they want to keep raising the price, but the domestic full payers are dropping. So we're going to keep the price up, perceived price, the MSRP price. We're going to keep giving tuition aid. So now your average student gets 20 to 30% of aid, but still it's, we're a prestigious private 100-student institution. It's giving, aid to 30 kids or to 80 kids, at a varying degree. And so what I've had many conversations with clients and would-be clients about these sorts of issues where it's I don't know what's going on, but my boss is angry at me. They're not able to charge as much. The 25 kids that used to count on coming from China aren't coming anymore. It's no longer, again, sort of macro issues you can't really control. It's they're not so eager to jump into American culture when, it's China, do the thing. There's stuff that is being dealt with there. So the people that are left to deal with it are just okay, I need to get 100 new campers that can full pay per week in my 9 weeks of revenue generation activity on campus. So it's just, I hope that there's some people listening that have had those conversations that I know I've been part of, and Steph's probably not had more intimately than me. I hope the context fits now. Like, oh, that's why that crazy board member was cornered me and was like, "You really got to get this baseball camp up and running."
Yeah.
I don't know, Steph, is that exactly what happened?
Yeah. We saw a drop in a few of our programs, and actually a lot of the people that I sort of report to kept asking me, well, why aren't we getting these kids anymore? No, I'm the new girl. I don't know, but there are less humans to go to these programs. And also, not for nothing, but like some of these specialized programs, let's call it baseball camps. Anybody could run a baseball camp. Those particular markets are really saturated. So yeah, there was a lot of that like pressing, like you need to earn back these kids. I can only work so many hours and 6 days a week, sometimes 7, when we're not in camp season to try to chase these new enrollments. It's not a good investment in our energies.
So what is a good investment in our energies? What have you found, Steph? Why don't we start with you, please?
I'm so glad that you asked, Travis. So one thing that I felt really committed to was this idea of bringing Hofstra summer camps away from the island of Hofstra summer camps and directly linking it to the university. So as soon as I got here, I said, this unique logo looks so cute, but it isolates us. We are going straight with the university logo. We're trying to align our website. So when people come to, our social and our enrollment pages, we're very clearly aligned with the university. One thing that we're really digging into now is building our pre-collegiate summer academy. So taking all of those really hungry adjunct professors that don't have enough work at the collegiate level and are also really concerned about the enrollment cliff, and building unique programs so that not only do I get to employ them, but I'm building like pipeline programs. So these young people get exposed to really interesting programs that they can take during the summer, but also they get introduced to the facilities on campus, the professors, university life. So we're sort of at the beginning of that now, but looking to build that substantially so that we're not only welcoming kids to our summer camp, but welcoming kids to Hofstra University. I think that's going to help, both sides.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope you saw all 3 of our faces when you said programs off campus.
Yeah.
Because I think it is one of the biggest limiting beliefs of summer camps is that things have to happen on a facility that we're used to, and that we create a beautiful, welcoming space will automatically mean that people come to us. And I don't believe that that's the case. When evidence shows that that's not the case. Lots of people have great staff, great facilities, and are just standing there with open arms, watching no one walk up the road.
Yeah, not enough.
Yeah. What do you think, Jake?
So I asked Ken Gronbach this question last night when we were FaceTiming, and he said, find a population that can keep you alive and cater to them. So what's the population? Where's the numbers? And so one of the clear things that we need to do in camp is make sure that we are serving a diverse population. And so really working to gain trust and to welcome people of color into our spaces is absolutely essential. And that probably means that we need minority-owned camps, because we can't just have white-owned camps and expect minority groups to come in and just act like all of the other folks that we've had over the last 20, 30 years. And so diversifying is absolutely important. And the other thing that he really said is there's a huge industry right now for those who are working to keep the old people alive, So doctors and nurses and hospitals, they're all doing great. And that's a great industry to get into right now. Well, here's the thing, friends. Old people need camp too. Adults need camp too. we've got wonderful facilities, we've got wonderful programs that can cater to people in older age cohorts. And so are we doing that in terms of our retreats, our day events, and things like that? And so we can cater directly to them and serve them directly. And that can be a way to continue our work. And in the case of the camps I work with, we would say our ministry to people of all ages. And also what I would add to that is, as we think demographically, as we think of some of these age cohorts or some of these times in camp where we've had historic highs, the late 1990s and early 2000s, we had historic highs at a lot of our camps in terms of camper numbers, in terms of staff numbers. Those folks, it's now 25 years later. A lot of those folks are getting to be of donor age. And so how are we connecting with them and making sure that we are looping them back in? This is something that colleges and universities learned 100, 150 years ago. Work with your alumni. Get your donors. These are the people who care. They've had these tremendous experiences at your place, and they want to support the next generation that goes there. The same is true for our camps. Why do we not have alumni networks at our camps in the same way that colleges and universities do? We are sitting on a gold mine right now, and this is something that we can really leverage so that we can work towards things like endowments and other things like that. Now, I will say it's important to keep your operations and your operating costs in line and use some of these donor dollars for capital improvements and other things like that, and forward-thinking missional things. But this is something that we should absolutely be thinking about. We've served this high number of people, and those people are now entering into their donor years. And especially those who are in the older age cohort, in the baby boom generation. Those folks, they have tons of money demographically, I'll say, as a whole, as an age cohort. And so are we engaging them as donors? That's something that we should definitely be doing, and making sure we're in their planned giving. This is not something we should shy away from. So those are some of the things that I would say.
Well, and I think I don't want people who work at private camps to ignore their alumni. Even if they're not necessarily a potential future donor, they are a potential advocate for you in ways that I think are really underexplored in the private camp industry. Probably 50-50, like half of the camps I talk to have a great alumni connection, and some of them are like, yeah, I don't really know. No one really kept up with them. And it is easier to catch up with those people and get them engaged than it is to find. I mean, you don't have the same kind of people in the world that can have that same interest in what you do.
Absolutely. You want an effective use of the internet and AI? Find those people. Like, these people are findable.
Yeah.
You've got lists. Let's find them. Let's connect with them. Let's make sure we're building those relationships. That's so important. And then the last thing that I'll say, and this is reiterating this because I already said this, but lean into what we do best. The world desperately needs what we have to offer at camp. And so lean into those things, tell your story, tell about what we do best, and people will want to support you, and will open up space for more campers to come. The thing that's different between camp and with something like compulsory education or even college education is that a smaller portion of the population does it. Everybody goes to high school, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the pool that we draw from for colleges. But with camp, we have the opportunity to expand our market and our market portion, I should say, our market share. And so that's something that we can definitely do by advocating for what we do best and telling our story better and getting a higher percentage of young people to our camps. That can help us through these demographic challenges as well.
My face might have exploded. For those who can see, I was like, when you talk about the alumni thing, man, this is like a nano data nerding thing that, like I said in the beginning, I'm like so living in the applied world. I've had multiple camps come to me that they're like existing clients or they want to be clients. Like, we're going to have our 100th anniversary next year. We'd like to do a big thing. And I'm like, okay, well, what does your alumni list look like? And they're like, well, we got a FileMaker Pro a couple of years ago. And they're like, we have this Access database that my dad used to run. Like, he's now been retired for 30 years though. And so it's sort of like nano data of your population and kind of keeping that clean so that you can be nimble and deal with these things is something I'm just like we can't really talk about it, but if you're not doing that, start doing that. And it starts with like the first step of that is collect your campers' emails when they're 13 so that you can bring them back as staff, so that you can bring them back as, whatever program you come up with to get them involved. But the thing I'm Jake, you get me all jacked up. Like when you start new camps and like groups of new camps, and the model that I've actually seen for this that's been productive in a different way is, are you all familiar with the FJC's incubator program, the Foundation for Jewish Camping? I'm not even Jewish, but they let me help out because I have an honorary tribe card member. So like that model of doing camp differently in a different place. So you take that magic ethos and you keep the thing that's important, and you go find the people that weren't coming to your static program. Obviously the hard part is, you starts with funding to do things very well like this. But I think there is room, and there are other ways to, that's the group, fundraising and incubator program style. There should be not an industry, but like an interest specific way to do that for Christian camps, to revitalize those sleepy retreat centers that are, maybe don't have the life flowing through them. But also there are people, I dropped a link in the chat. One of my friends, Tiffany, started a program in Milwaukee where she's bringing camp to a state subsidized program. And so it's not being sold as Camp Run Amok in the lake. It's camp inside of their school gym, but the kids that are getting free and subsidized school lunches and breakfasts, they need the camp the most. And so there are so many ways. So if you're a private camp professional or a not-for-profit, like high functioning camp person, don't think that the only way is to stay in your camp or take over your camp or take over the neighboring camp. There's a lot of ways that you can bring camp to a different population in a different way. And I'm going to talk to Jake about how to raise money and start a network of camp.
Really quick things. Tiff was one of the hosts of the Day Camp Pod, so you could hear her in the first 3 seasons talk about her programs. That's great. Camp alumni, how we reconnect with them, how we engage them. We have done lots of CampHacker podcasts. Just search CampHacker and Camp alumni. There's been some amazing ideas. It's always a weird part of this part of my job that we put out so much stuff in the world that I think is so helpful. It's just sitting there, and we have to figure out how to surface it over and over again. That's on me, but I'm saying search, and you're going to find some great stuff. One of the things that you said, Jake, that I'd like to hear from the 3 of you about. You talked about, do the thing that we do best, and I want to reiterate, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I want to reiterate that the thing that we do best is not run camp for the same kids that we've done it. We need to more clearly define the effects of camp, the less than just the same old thing. We do that best. There are other things. We're just not very good at articulating them.
I think that's absolutely right. We don't know how to tell our story that well,
No.
or we're telling it from, a tradition perspective of our particular site, rather than from an industry perspective of, this is something that the world desperately needs. We need places to unplug from technology. We need places where kids are connecting face to face, heart to heart, and they're learning these social skills. They're learning to get through challenges. They're learning that they can fail forward, right? They're learning resiliency. They're learning leadership skills. All of these incredible skills that are so valuable in the workplace and in life and our communities and our society. These are things that we desperately need, that kids are getting less and less of in other spaces, especially when we have so many things that are mediated through screens and through technology.
Mm-hmm.
And so camp is one of those unmediated spaces, and it's the last place in existence where they're putting their phones down for more than a few hours at a time, without being punished, right? They're not getting it taken away for something bad they did. It's a reward. Like, you don't have to have your phone this week. And they are ecstatic about that time that they have, where they're talking with people face to face. People are looking them in the eyes. They don't want their phone because nobody has their phone. And it really is a unique environment, and something that we should be leaning into.
Yeah. Steph, when you talk about revamping how your neighbors talk about the camp, I get the rebrand and sort of more strongly associating it with the university. Have you gone through the exercise of defining effectively the benefits of these kind of programs so that you can tell those stories?
Yeah, so we ran a few of these programs last summer as like an experiment. And then of course at the end of the summer we surveyed everybody. But more importantly, I'm speaking to my colleagues and friends in the camping industry, and a lot of them are, well, they're complaining that there's a drop off in the age that I'm looking for. So not only am I the solution, but I'm also the problem here. There's a need for programs for kids in that like ninth grade pocket where they kind of feel like they're too old for camp. So I feel like there's a space for some growth and maybe some future conversations with residential programs specifically to sort of tap into this idea of partnering with universities and expanding those programs so that they're retaining those campers and not losing them to somebody like me. Although I'll take them, happy to have all campers, but we're finding that, there is a need in the community for these types of programs. So we're building it.
Yeah. That's great. This is such a important, engaging topic. I think there's a lot more stuff we could do. Eric, is there one point you'd want to leave us with?
I think no matter what level of resolution you have influence over, whether it be like your department, your desk, your school, state, whatever it is, I think the idea that you can put your surfboard in front of a wave instead of paddling, in a lake and waiting, like if the wave's not going to be there, it's probably your job to go find it. Now, Jake's talking like if you might not be become a neonatalist telling everybody they need to have more kids, but you can probably make the case for why you need to open up more ninth grade level programs as precursors to, matriculations into the university. Like wherever you are, there's something you can control to get ahead of these shifts. And like the old adage goes, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So I would kind of nudge everybody towards, you can do it.
Thank you. Jake, do you have an ender?
We know this is coming because we know the number of people that have been born. Like we know that this is coming, right? This is not something that we can dodge. It's not avoidable. So plan for it now. And hopefully you've already been planning for it. But camp's closing is probably going to happen. Your camp closing is not inevitable. There are things that you can do right now, innovative things, leaning into your strengths, telling your story better, making sure that you're catering to a population that is there for you and can keep you alive. Who is there to work with and to minister with? Find those people and work with them and cater to them. You need to make these changes now. You cannot bury your head in the sand and keep doing the same old thing because this is coming. It is. We have the numbers in hand. And it's going to hit different areas of the country, whether you're in Canada or in the United States. It'll hit different areas of the country differently because demographics are different in the Northeast, the United States compared with the South, right? So dive into those specific numbers, know where you're at, and plan accordingly. And do it now.
Yeah. Steph?
No, I think a lot of the folks out there are probably nervous about this, not because of the numbers, but because of what it will mean for their traditions. So Eric talked a lot about being proactive. I think if I could plug a little urgency, don't be afraid of this. Even if it means taking your tradition and just tweaking it ever so slightly so that the essence of it is still there, but you're moving forward and you're beating the wave. That's coming. It's coming. You have to get ahead of it.
Yeah. For me, the final thought, we've been talking all season about resilience and how camps can be more thoughtful and intentional about the future of their organizations while still accepting that every camp director we know is overworked and overwhelmed at this point. And so coming up on a big problem like this, ignoring it won't help, but there are ways to start to build space for you to think creatively and do the research and pull on whatever skills and people you need to start to get thoughtful about this. And I believe in us. I think we can do this. Thank you for that amazing discussion. What I'm going to do now is move us on to our tool of the week.
Tool of the week.
So if you are following these folks here and have never listened to CampHacker before, we ask each host to bring a tool that would make someone else the job of being a camp director easier or make them be a better camp director. And Jake, I'm going to start with you because we've referenced yours a few times throughout this discussion.
Yeah, I think I led myself into this. So making sure that I cite the person that I've been talking about the whole time. So Ken Gronbach is his name. He's a really well-known demographer, and you can find him at kgcdirect.com. kgcdirect.com. You'll see a lot of his work. You'll see some videos that my brother produced for him, which is kind of fun. And so he did a lot of the promo videos. And so that's how I got connected with him. But a lot of really interesting things about market research and what's coming and how industries can prepare. And so he really does it from an economic perspective. And so I think it's really valuable, and it's valuable for us in the camp industry to be thinking in this way as well.
Great. Thank you. Steph, what's your tool?
My tool is Instagram ad that I fell for. It's called the Unstuck Box. Ugh. I got to be an influencer now and put my hand in. So it's very simple. They have a bunch of different products, but I happen to fall for this one called the One-on-Ones. And it's a series of about 100 cards in this deck. And they have like a kind of like reminds me of Trivial Pursuit, like different categories of questions that you can ask. As a manager, supervisor, they never really teach you what questions to ask. As somebody, in the working world, you always say, I wish they would ask me those questions, but like there isn't really a place to store it. Well, now there is. It's called the Unstuck Box. I just find that it's really helpful in initiating conversation and asking those questions that you want to ask, but you don't know how. So I'm a big fan.
That's great. Thank you for that. My tool this week is a weekly newsletter called Joyful Belonging, and it's written by Casper Tequila, which is a real butchering of the Dutch version of that name. But if you search for, go to camphacker.tv/podcast and search for Joyful Belonging, you'll get a list to it. And it is a weekly newsletter about building community. And I think there's some really great ideas. It's really good. So I think it's great. Eric.
I can't believe I forgot this, but this week I spoke with a gentleman tasked with revitalizing he tasked with 10 camps or 10 programs to run this summer to revitalize an auxiliary program where there's nothing. And so the thing that was most helpful for him that I think many people might want to hear about is in the sort of camp of lean startup, there's a specialty, I would call it, of innovation accounting. So if you have not been an entrepreneur your whole life, but you are now tasked with being an entrepreneur and bringing some nimble, creating a new program inside of a big, stuffy Hofstra university that's been there for a long time, you're an entrepreneur. And so innovation accounting is the sort of process. You can learn more about it. There's a blog post I think Travis will reference in the show notes, but the process is basically pick the numbers that would give you success or failure after the experiment ahead of time, instead of looking back in time like, maybe we could get more next time. So innovation accounting and the lean startup structure for program innovators.
Excellent. Thank you. I want to take a second and thank Steph and Jake and Eric for being a part of this amazing discussion. I feel like there's a lot more there. So when we find the right angle, we'll try to bring the three of you back for that. If you want to figure out a way to contact these folks, to hire them, to ask them questions, again, go to camphacker.tv/podcast and find the links to their information there, the ways to contact them. They're all doing really interesting stuff and deserve a follow-up for sure. Chris Hudson, and I want to thank the sponsors of this week's episode, as well as our editor, Ryan Vandertorn, and GoCamp Pro's executive producer of podcasting, Matt Wilfred. And thanks for the evening, friends.
The CampHacker podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening. CampHacker, bringing your world into focus.